Welcome to the I-80 Club and the I-80 Football Show with Jack Mitchell. Jack, what are you doing here?
I don't actually know, if I'm being honest. Am I the guest this week? Do you want to hear my takes on football? Because I doubt them.
We did that on Wednesday night on I-80 Live. We'll do that on Saturday morning for the Saturday Morning Coffee Show. I know your takes. You join me each and every week, at least twice a week. No, today, Dirk Chatelain joins the I-80 Club. Dirk Chatelain back yet again?
What's that guy been doing?
Well, that's what everybody always is asking, right? How does he make money?
Doing?
What is he doing?
What's he up to these days?
Does he still watch Nebraska sports?
No, I don't know. Not answering our texts, number one. Coaching basketball, number two.
Yeah.
And
then there's a golf course that he does. He golfs or something that. Yeah,
yes.
I think
he's a pro golfer. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Congratulations to him. But no, Dirk Chatelain joins us today for a wide-ranging conversation, Jack, and it's a really fun one. He had a lot of takes, as people will hear, about TJ Lateef and Nebraska's future at the quarterback position. A very interesting conversation, as always, with Mr. Dirk Chatelain.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't know if you want me to say something there or not, or if that was the end of it. You can cut this off if it's not, but otherwise, I agree. Always great to talk to Dirk for the most part.
For the most part.
Dirk and I, as you'll probably see in the interview, there's always a little tension there, as is with me and many media members. So, a lot of history there.
And count up the number of times today, Jack, where he is suddenly not on camera anymore for a few seconds.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, that's going to be a real fun Easter egg throughout the pod today.
Those are going to become screenshots, I can guarantee.
Yes, they will. So
enjoy it was fun.
Yeah. We think you will. Coming up over the next few days, a reminder: we have Big Ten Breakdown dropping on Friday. We have Saturday Morning Coffee Show earlier this week. A reminder: 8:30 to 9:30, because Jack is moseying his way on up to the Pentagon. Not that Pentagon. They don't allow journalists there. The other Pentagon, because he's going to watch some Nebraska basketball. Jack, it's November. It's football season. What on earth are you doing?
I am going with some friends. I've never been to the Pentagon. Everybody says it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
Nebraska's finally playing a team with a pulse, so that's exciting. And I will be down there watching Husker basketball. That way I can come back and we will do I don't have the time yet. Maybe I will by the time this airs, but I will do a show with Caleb next week, and we will get going with our first Nebrasketball brunch or a new name show, because I want to report back, use my trip to talk about what I saw for the I-80 Club. So we'll have that by this weekend. We'll let you guys know when that's gonna air or when it's gonna drop. So
perfect. So that'll come up next week. So Jack will be off and running. So no Saturday night show. There's no game to recap, of course. Sunday, a Volleyball State for subscribers, and then into the next week we go. Penn State next week. So we will have all sorts of coverage surrounding that. Of course, patreon.com/I-80 Club. We mentioned it a couple seconds ago. The I-80 Live. That is a bonus pod that is available only for subscribers. We did some mailbag questions, some chat sack questions this week on the episode. Jack had a great time with our subscribers. So again, if you want access to that episode or others, and ad-free as well, patreon.com/I-80 Club. All right, enough of us. Let's get to Dirk Chatelain and our conversation with Dirk this week on the I-80 Football Show. So happy to welcome back onto the I-80 Club our dear friend, Dirk Chatelain. Everybody, Dirk is always wondering, what is Dirk Chatelain doing these days? And I usually say, I think he's coaching and watching sports. How are you?
Well. Isn't it nice to be back? And isn't it nice to be in a little bit different situation than we expected? Because when you guys made this invitation to me, it looked like Nebraska football was going to fall apart. And you made the cheap, lazy move to invite Dirk back on the show. Nebraska loses.
So
Nebraska
cliche.
sucks.
So cliche.
Let's see what Dirk thinks. That'll be an easy ratings hit. We never ask him to come on when Nebraska's playing well, but now that Nebraska is falling apart, let's have Dirk come in. He'll whack the piñata a couple times. We'll call it a half-hour show. We'll move on. We don't even have to talk. And how about this, boys? Little twist of fate. Nebraska's rolling. It's not too late to push me back a week or two if you need, but I just want to throw this back in your face a little bit, because you took the cheap, lazy approach, and here we are.
I mean, you make a good point. I am barely interested in your thoughts at this point, if I'm being honest right
They're
now.
too good. The team is too good.
I've got plenty of my own good thoughts. Why would I need Dirk's at this point? This is not his specialty, obviously.
I
right?
feel like you should have waited till they lose by a last-second field goal to Iowa to have me on.
We'll wait and release this then.
Yeah, do you want to talk about Dirk, Nebraska goes down to Iowa 13-10 again. A field goal. This one somehow even crazier because it was a 70-yarder into the wind. I mean, that's a heartbreaker for Nebraska football.
I feel like we have underplayed just how unbelievable some of these Iowa field goals have been over the years. Why is it that opposing kickers never miss against Nebraska at the end of a game? Have you noticed this?
Jack, have you noticed that? Have you noticed any of these made field goals over the years?
I'm glad you've asked. It's not just that they make them. It's that if you paused your TV on a straight-on shot and you took a ruler and measured it, the football is at the exact midpoint of the goalpost. For some reason, that annoys me.
It's almost like, gosh, there's got to be a metaphor for it. It feels like getting punched in the mouth. No, not quite a punch in the mouth. It's like getting hit in the gut. No, not in the gut. It's almost like getting kicked in the groin.
I'm gonna write that.
Oh man,
got a pen here. That's a good idea, maybe for a title, Jack, for a project we could do.
I don't know, man. Listen. I used to be. I'm just in a crappy mood because I had a guy call Josh's show yesterday and complained that I was being too positive on our halftime show when Nebraska was up 21-7 and the offense essentially was having a perfect game at that point, and I was too positive. And this is after a summer where everyone told me I was too negative, which everyone tells you all the time, Dirk. So you understand, but I get both sides. There's no happy medium for anyone. There is no happy medium that you can be too appropriately negative or appropriately positive. So, I'm just throwing my hands up right now.
Well, you're never satisfied with your audience, Jack. It's one of the things that makes you, and you are absolutely you're always dialed into what they think. You are incapable of just keeping them at a distance and not paying attention to what they say.
It's a skill I wish I had.
Dirk, you mentioned it when we reached out to you. I'm pretty sure it might have been it was right around the Minnesota loss. And one of the things that I mentioned to you was could talk about.
Shocking.
Wow, Josh, you didn't really refute Dirk's point very well.
At least you admit it. You admit it.
If I'm remembering the dates right, the text might have come in 2 days before the loss. So shout out to us for not leaning on the negativity. I
tried to text him immediately after the Michigan loss and there's something wrong.
Hey, yeah, do you want to come on? Yeah, we texted him after the blackout. Hey, do you want to come on? But Dirk, one of the things I did mention was we could talk about the Rhule Penn State stuff. Are you surprised that since that text a month ago that everything has gotten locked up and finished and we're not really having those discussions anymore? Because I thought we'd at least get into the Penn State week and still be hot and heavy about everything.
Well, I think a couple things happened. Nebraska did not make the college football playoff push that would have made him a even more natural candidate. I always kind of thought that Nebraska's record was going to be a secondary factor in the Rhule to Penn State thing, just because of his relationships there. If you talk to people at Penn State, I think a lot of them are ready for an insider. James Franklin was an outsider. So I thought Rhule was going to be a great fit based on just the fact that of his ties there. But I think the contract extension obviously probably sewed that up. I don't think anything's ever completely done on that, but yeah, a little surprised that it hasn't been lingered a little bit more, in part because I don't know if Penn State has, there's not even much murmur there about who it's going to be, right? I've paid less attention to it over the last 2 weeks. I imagine it will crank up a little bit next week, going back there, but probably not so much in Rhule's candidacy and more in terms of Rhule going back home.
If you're Troy Dannon in that situation, right? So let's say after when, okay, that's fine. he's a great guest. This is why when I'm on, this is why everyone's like, get Dirk John, and I
You
can't
can
wait.
keep talking.
I do know you can hear me. Again, most
I-
of us professionals use earphones. I forgot you're not using one of those.
Am I bound to like sit in front of the camera for the entire 45 minutes?
Listen, when I can't walk away and still hear because of professional equipment, so I forgot you're not.
I'm not going to edit this out now. We're just going to leave this in. That was hilarious.
Hey, I have a dog who needs to go outside, Jack.
I guess it's just
the dog wants to go outside. Jack, I'm not going to give my dog a bladder infection because I am bound to this chair because of your sensitivity.
It's about respect. You asked people crappy questions for years and they sat there and listened to them. And now I ask you the first question in the interview, and it's like, I got to get up and leave during
Josh, do you know how many times I came on his radio show and had to give up like a half hour of my life every week? Doesn't matter where I'm at. When he calls, I have to answer. I can't be doing anything else. There can't be any noise, any distraction, because Jack's radio show takes priority over the rest of my life for those 30 minutes. What did I get for it? Never a paycheck, never a thank you.
Clicks galore. Clicks. You got clicks galore. This is why you're not working right now, is that interview. That's why. You're welcome. Enjoy your leisurely morning. My question was going to be, and so kind of you to listen to it. My question was going to be, like, if you're in Troy Dannon's shoes after Penn State, becomes a potential suitor, right? Are you thinking, okay, I've got to lock him up because we just can't lose him because the alternative to that is terrifying? Or is it, well, I want to keep him, but I don't necessarily want to spend a whole lot more money doing this, right? Obviously, we know what he decided in this whole thing, but I'm trying to figure out what exactly was motivating him. Or is he thinking my fortunes are tied to rules, right? And so I got to keep him here and I got to make sure he's successful. And so that's what he's trying to do here. What do you think was in his mind during that process?
Well, I think first and foremost, Nebraska can't lose a guy and have another coaching search right now. It's not a place that anybody wanted to be, regardless of whether you think Rhule is on schedule or behind schedule. I think you could argue that Rhule is probably a year behind schedule, especially when you compare it to some of the better reclamation projects out there, Indiana notwithstanding. But it's one of these deals where, like, what's the alternative, right? You can't lose him. You got away with that. You got through it without giving him a bunch more money. I don't think, Matt Rhule was probably going anywhere either way. But
yeah,
I don't think it cost Nebraska. It didn't cost Nebraska a bunch to make it happen. And, it's probably one of these deals where, like, you give a little bit to maintain a good relationship there. And hopefully, you lock him up in the process for at least one more year. If he goes 11-2 next year, is he guaranteed to be at Nebraska in 2027? Probably not. But this is just the nature of the business. He's done a good job, not a great job, but a good job. And I think because of that, you do what you can to keep him around.
Dirk, you mentioned you think he might be a year behind schedule. Is there a world where the final two games have you leaving the 2025 regular season saying he is on schedule now? Or are you not even allowing yourself to kind of think that they could get to a 9-3 record over the next 2 weeks?
Oh, if they get to 9-3, I think we can say that, things have gone really well this year. But I don't want to jump too far ahead on that yet.
Sure.
I think, and I don't want to belabor the schedule part of it, but, this thing is really, it was set up this year, man. I mean, Michigan at home without a head coach and, USC kind of fluttering and vulnerable. And, this was really a year especially with the offensive personnel and a second year quarterback. And, like, this was a year that I think Nebraska might look back and kick themselves because in a different world, I think Nebraska is a college football playoff team, with this roster and this schedule. it would not have been a stretch by any means to see, knowing how this played out, especially with the Penn State collapse, for Nebraska to have been 10-2 and being, be the last team in the college football playoffs. So I think, people should get excited if they go 8-4, 9-3, and that's great. But I also hope people recognize the fact that this was kind of sitting on a tee.
Are there off the field non-record
How have
items?
we not talked about quarterbacks yet? Do you guys realize that Nebraska had a quarterback change on Saturday? Were you watching the game? Like, why are we talking about anything else? Do you know how to run a radio show?
No, we don't. You're the pro. You're the pro with your.
Why are we burying the lead under the sixth question?
What I really wanted to ask you that I've buried is it's just, how do you feel? It's so nice to see Gretna.
Should we break down Luke Lindermeyer's performance through the season so far?
It's so nice to see Gretna football finally get some good fortune in a postseason situation. I guess that's what I'm just been so happy about that. It's hard to think of anything else. That's been really nice. We're going in chronological order. We get to talk to you once every year. We're just like going through the time period.
I'm literally sitting here every Wednesday.
You're literally sitting there not responding to our texts is what you're literally sitting there doing. You're sitting there, but you're taking the text,
but you're not
holding
the text.
Okay? You're taking the text.
Hey,
gotta get his dog.
I'm not joking. My other dog wants out.
So anyway, Josh, I'll just ask you this question.
Okay, yeah, I'd love to answer it.
It's our guest. But apparently Dirk can still hear me through his computer speaker. Okay, before we get to the quarterbacks, which we were going to talk about, by the way, but
that was my next question. Yeah.
But like, how much do you think, and what are the things? Obviously, the situation off the field with Matt Rhule and just everything that exists outside of the record and on the field, I think probably falls in his favor in this whole discussion, right? But are there any things that you think from Troy Dannett's perspective, from the university's perspective, that particularly fall? Is it just that, hey, he's a professional guy, he's easy to work with, right? Or is there something more specific about it that you think, having been around the Bo Pelini era and the Mike Riley era and some of the Scott Frost era?
I'm not privy to all the inside stuff in terms of, their relationship or what Rhule may be doing behind the scenes, but I think there is something to be said in this era of college football, especially for finding the face of a university, who you can trust, who can be promotional, who basically represents your entire university whenever you need him to. You can't put a value, you can't necessarily put a number value on that, but I do think it gives you sort of the benefit of the doubt in every situation, right? So, I don't think an AD is worried when Matt Rhule walks into a press conference, what he might say, or, what he might be doing on a Saturday night after a game. Like, again, I don't know how much that's really worth. I mean, if Matt Rhule was 5-7, it wouldn't matter, right? He would fail regardless. But I think when you're kind of in that gray area between you're doing a pretty good job, I think pretty good becomes good based on all the PR stuff that he does. And again, we're not just talking about the face of a football program here. Like, this guy, if you haven't noticed, like, the University of Nebraska is not in a great place in some other ways right now.
Wait for the next few weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think Rhule's value, just in terms of like stabilizing the public relations component, is important. And the last thing I think you want to do with all this other university distress is to have a football coaching search on top of this. So I'm sure that was a smaller factor in not only the contract extension, but also putting a value on Rhule.
All right, Dirk, let's talk quarterback. And I'm going to say a sentence that I hate saying, but I do want to do this. I'm going to read a couple of your tweets from Saturday night during the game. Because in all seriousness, man, like, I don't think, like, I feel like I kind of know the angle that you're going to take on things just because I've been reading and listening to you for so many years. But I was a little surprised at what you said. He says, I don't want to make any grand proclamations about TJ Lateef based on 3 drives. But I will say this, quarterback mobility adds so much to a college football offense, takes pressure off of everyone else. Of course, this has been true for generations. Later on, you added, if you determine that Raiola is still Nebraska's best option in 26, fine. But I hope tonight at least redefines the target/standard for clean quality offense. It hasn't been good enough this fall. Tonight it was. Lateef had a lot to do with it. It's only UCLA, but notable. And the reason I think I was surprised is I think anyone watching that game probably saw the same thing, but I think people are so afraid to say, like, yeah, so now maybe this is a discussion moving forward. You seem to think it is. How much of that is just the cleanliness of Saturday, and how much of it is, I guess, the uncleanliness of the last 21 games under Dylan Raiola?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't want this to like come off overly critical of Raiola, but I feel like people have kind of had blinders on, and have done a lot of excuse making for how the offense has looked. And I mean, you guys, what was their excuse this year? Like, they had, by any standard, they had one of the top 10 offensive coordinators in college football. They had a 5-star quarterback in his second year. They had a ton of experience at the skill positions. Probably their best arsenal of skill players in, I don't know.
Yeah, we talked
a
about
long
that.
time.
Yeah.
I mean, they spent money on the offensive line. It wasn't going to be a great offensive line, but it should have been a good offensive line. They had depth. I mean, guys, I feel like people have just kind of swept this under the rug, like how disappointing the offense has been. And you can look at numbers and say, well, they rank here and they rank here, and like that's great, but so often they've just kind of been an inefficient mess. And I don't think it's even close to been good enough. So again, I'm not pinning that all on Raiola, but I do. I've watched enough football, and you guys have too, that you recognize how your margin for error increases when your quarterback can move and can scramble and can, occupy a defender in the run game. And when your offense is struggling, to have a quarterback who doesn't move well, it really puts pressure on everybody else. And I think, again, I'm just going to be honest. I think there's a portion of the Nebraska fan base that was so excited and so flattered that Dylan Raiola would come to Nebraska that they sort of made a subconscious deal with themselves or with their friends that we're going to be real slow to criticize this guy because we're so thankful that he came here, right? It's a little bit of an element of like the hottest girl in school said yes to prom with me, and so I'm not going to say anything mean about her when she shows up 30 minutes late or whatever. And I just think, again, regardless of what Lateef does, I think that's actually a secondary conversation. I think the primary conversation needs to be Nebraska's offense hasn't been good enough, not even close to good enough. And Saturday was the best that it has looked, in my opinion, in a year and a half. And A, why is that? And B, that needs to be the standard going forward. So if Raiola can get the offense to that level, that's great. I mean, I don't really care who the quarterback is, but I think people need to recognize when they're eating a month-old single stuff Oreo versus a fresh double stuff Oreo out of the package. And I think people have sort of confused very mediocre offense the last year and a half and called it passable just because they were afraid to criticize Dylan Raiola.
Now, I'll push back. I mean, I think one of the reasons is, number one, I think there was so much blame on the idea that he just had no time ever, that you never got it. You never just got to see it. Now, there could have been an argument that, well, if you're never going to protect a quarterback, a mobile quarterback is going to be better just because of your problems that are going along with it. I think the other thing that impacted the discussion recently was in 3 of the last 4 games, he has come through in the clutch, in the very end of the game, in the exact time that Nebraska has not been able. We did a podcast you might have heard of where we talked about how Nebraska could not, on the last possession, they had the offense puckered up every single time, and against Michigan State and against Maryland and against Northwestern. And it looked the best the offense ever has at the end of games. Now, I'm not saying I'm not justifying the point, but I do think those in particular went a long way because fans haven't seen that before.
You're right. Yep. And I thought he was really good. I thought he was exceptional in the last drive in a couple of those games. And again, I don't want to make this about specifically the performance of Raiola. I think the issue is the offense under Raiola has been extremely sloppy and inconsistent. And I think, part of that honestly is on the coaching staff for not finding ways to protect him and enhance what he does best, and sort of hide the vulnerabilities. Like,
yes. That's the whole Minnesota game. That's the entirety of the Minnesota game, in my opinion.
They've done a very poor job of sort of crafting plans that minimize his deficiencies, right? But having said all that, some of this is on Raiola. Like, he doesn't move very well. He has spectacular, escapes every once in a while, but he's kind of a sitting duck. He holds on to the ball too long. He doesn't seem to see the field very well sometimes. And it was notable watching Saturday night where, you guys, they called some pretty bold plays on the last drive of the game.
Well, it's two passes back to back.
I'm not sure they would have called. I don't want to say I'm not sure they would have called those plays, but I was shocked that they called those plays.
They would have if they thought he had time, if he would have time.
Okay.
Yeah, I think.
But, part of the problem with the program over the last 15 years is there just hasn't been quarterback depth or quarterback competition. And,
yeah.
You probably can't keep both of these guys around, but it's at least nice to see an alternative to, when things aren't going very well. And the last point I would make is that, like, again, I'm judging this compared to what the expectation was going into the year. I think if you just look at it on paper, you're like, oh, Nebraska's got a pretty good offense. It compares well to your random year, 2015, 2019, whatever. But when you consider that this on paper should have been the best offense that they've had in a long, long, long time, I just don't think they look very good most of the year. And even with, we all have these sort of text chains with friends or, people have watched games for forever. And even when Nebraska was winning this year, it didn't feel like they were playing well, right? Offensively. And the Maryland game, they didn't play well. They won the game, but they didn't look good offensively. Northwestern, they didn't look good offensively. Cincinnati, they didn't look good offensively. It's just, they don't, even when they win with Raiola, they don't seem to play like clean, consistent, efficient football. And there is a little bit of an eye test element to this, where, you got to judge it analytically too. And I understand that, but the eye test tells me that they're just better with a quarterback that can move.
Yeah, Dirk, this might be a loaded question, but I wonder if they think like too highly of Dylan Raiola, because you hear the way in which Rhule talks about him and how they can put so much on his shoulders and he can do things at the line of scrimmage. And then I think of how he talked about TJ Lateef last Monday, and it was basically like, it's got to be all hands on deck. We've all got to do what we can to lift up the quarterback. They never talk about it that way with Dylan Raiola. They talked about it with TJ Lateef, and I think there was a purpose behind it. But I wonder if they call plays or have designed an offense in a way that they shouldn't have, where they need to make it, as you said, easier so he is not a sitting duck, and he also needs to be better in that as well.
Yeah. I will say, though, Rhule's most recent comments about Lateef were interesting, in terms of how mobility has made it easier for him. And I'm guessing that was Monday, maybe? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily listen to every press conference anymore.
Don't know what day it is. We get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, it might have been
don't shower that often. You know,
it might have been Saturday. Actually, I don't even know. I honestly don't care. But it was interesting. He sort of spoke truth about the value of mobility and how it made it easier on, Nebraska's offense because UCLA had to do certain things because TJ could move and all this stuff. And it's like I'm reading this and I'm like nodding my head. It's like, yeah. This is what Nebraska fans have been experiencing since, I don't know, Michael Bishop in 1998. Like, probably before that. It's really hard to defend a guy who can move both in the running game and also in the, in and outside the pocket when a pass play is called. So this shouldn't be a complete shock to people that mobility matters.
Does a Dylan Raiola style quarterback, can there be a Dylan Raiola style quarterback in college football right now? Like, is there a place for his style in college football now?
Yeah, if you've got dudes everywhere else, like if you've got a great offensive line and it is funny though, and I hate to come back to the Mahomes stuff, but the difference between Raiola's mobility and Mahomes' mobility is really interesting to me. Again, some of Raiola's escapes are spectacular. Like he's,
avoiding sacks.
Yeah, he'll do things every once in a while where you're like, holy cow, that was miraculous. But consistent mobility, Mahomes has a much better feel for avoiding pressure and when to scramble for 15 yards on 3rd and 10, and that is a missing component of Nebraska's offense with Raiola. So I don't know. It's just weird how you can have probably the best running back in the Big Ten, probably the best offensive player that you've had in 11 years. You can have experience all over the field, and you can still have an offense that has struggled to be consistent. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And it's sort of a combination, I think, of just the deficiencies line up. You got tackles that struggle, you got quarterback that struggles sometimes. And Nebraska's offense, bottom line, should be more what we saw Saturday night in terms of proficiency and consistency, and less of what we saw the first 8-9 games of the year.
Dirk, one more TJ question. I'm curious as to what you are expecting to happen the next 2 weeks, because like, as I have described it a couple of times, if like UCLA is a 100 level course on defense, you could say Penn State is a 200 or 300, and then Iowa's a graduate level defense in terms of what they're going to offer and how they're going to try to defend him. Like, there will be ups and downs. It will not look as crisp as Saturday night, but are you expecting it to still look like a better overall unit than we have seen over the course of the last, year and a half?
I don't know. It'll be interesting. I really don't know.
That's a whole question.
Yeah. But again, I don't want to dumb it down to Lateef versus Raiola. I want to reset the expectation, right? Like, I want to shake people a little bit and say, hey, what you thought was acceptable the last year and a half, that actually shouldn't have been acceptable. Like, you need to raise your expectation level for the offense. So, I think Lateef might come back down to earth. You might see a little bit more of the offense that you saw against USC. But, I'm also open to the alternative that Nebraska found something on Saturday and that they can take it to the next level. They've got good players on that offense. It's not like they're hiding. Yeah. It's not like they don't have places to lean on when things get tough, because they absolutely do.
Yeah, that's been the most frustrating thing that I've said over and over. I mean, it's basically saying what you said, but it's just like, man, you have taken care of, other than the offensive line, every personnel issue that has plagued you for a decade, right? The wide receiver transfers haven't panned out, or there haven't been enough wide receivers. I mean, remember some of those years with Scott Frost, and you're like, I don't even know who's a Big Ten wide receiver on this team, right? You've got a tight end that's legitimate, right?
The best running back since
you have the best running back. You haven't had a running back. You haven't just had a guy, right? Yeah. I mean, with a few, Ozigbo and Anthony Grant had his moments, but you haven't had any of those. And you're right, Dirk. They just, not only have they not gotten out of it, the parts haven't added up to the sum that you would think it would. But I think you have a point that it was fun to watch for the first time against UCLA. Josh and I did a halftime show, and I was like, Josh, I'm having fun watching this offense, and I feel like I should have before this year. And a whole bunch of it, again, in many games, it was because Dylan Raiola couldn't even breathe because he had a guy in his face immediately. On the other hand, he had two straight games, two games where there was only three. We count Maryland too, but if you talk Maryland, USC before he got hurt, and Northwestern, there were 2-3 total sacks between those games, and it still didn't quite happen there.
And Jack, don't forget the fact that, again, on paper, they've got an offensive coordinator that you'd probably put in the top 10.
You got that too. That was a problem last year, supposedly, right? So you've cured every single problem, and your offensive line, to be honest, the offensive line really should be better than last year too. It's mostly last year's offensive line with 2 additions that you bought. And it is odd. What's the problem? What is the problem exactly? And could it, man, if Lateef hums for 2 more games, it's going to be crazy to think, wow, it was either Raiola or the way they tried to call plays for Raiola, which is something, which is, I think, taking the broader view. It's not just him, but it's the way they tried to conceive of the offense when he was in there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I think there's a scenario in which, let's say Nebraska finishes 2-1, and what's that, 9-4, right? I think there's a scenario in which Nebraska goes to Raiola in February and says, or January, and says, Dylan, I think we're going to go in a different direction. And I don't think that should shock people. The program needs to be bigger than one 5-star player. I guess, and that, again, that's not me wishing him out of town. That's just me wishing for Nebraska to raise their expectation level.
Yeah, I think, Dirk, if they finish the season and TJ continues to play well, I think collectively, people are going to say, well, the decision has been made and you should move forward with him. I wonder if they will agree with that, if it seems as obvious to us as it does to them.
Yeah. So, and again, I didn't get the full context of this, but there was a comment that Rhule made about, teams around college football looking at Lateef, and calling him, and, TJ will be on everybody's radar now. And it's like, well, wait a second. What if you just keep him and Dylan's on everybody's radar? Why is the expectation that Dylan is obviously better than TJ Lateef? That, I don't know. I think we've just kind of fallen into this 5-star thing where people love the idea of Dylan Raiola being your quarterback. And it's like, guys, he started 20 games. At some point, he's just got to be a little bit better. And the offense has got to be better. It's not all about Dylan, but maybe the fit just isn't right.
Yeah, and one more thing on that, Dirk, too, is that their future quarterback commits would say that they want to move in a direction of that kind of offense, right? They're the next 2 guys. Dayton is more mobile than Dylan, but everybody is, right? But certainly Trey Taylor, from all reports, that guy is a mobile quarterback. They're giving the game away of what they want to be as an offense.
Yep.
But here's why that doesn't happen though. No, number one, I don't know how much they think Dayton, is kind of important to the future. If that's, I don't know if that plays into it as all. The other interesting thing about it is if he would do that, if he would say, all right, Dylan wasn't the right fit. Do you realize then that would, I look down and I look up and
he can still hear you.
I know.
That's a great question. I can't wait to see where this question's going.
I forgot it already. Although,
do you are you incapable of talking to someone unless they're looking at you in the eyes?
It's a little hard. Yeah, I talk to my kids when they're looking at their phone all the time. But
we did radio for 10 years together on the phone, Jack. You could never actually see what I was doing.
Right, I know, but man, I read your eyes. That's how I determine how the question is going to go. Okay, so what I was saying is here are possible reasons it doesn't happen. Number one, I don't know if the Dayton Raiola, I honestly don't know. Josh, you seem to be thinking that's probably not a huge factor in the whole thing. So that's
Agreed.
part of it. Number two, though, here's a fascinating thing, man. If Matt Rhule ends up essentially saying by doing that, you know what, we just didn't have the right guy. We think he's great. He's not the right guy for this system. We think Lateef is a better fit. Do you realize then Matt Rhule's 3 years of being the head coach, he handpicked a quarterback that was not the right fit for the team, right? Because we all remember what happened in 2023.
Jack, we've been here before.
Like isn't that because that's what I was like? A lot of people afterwards were like, man, the one thing I'm saying about Matt Rhule is how did he end up with Jeff Sims there, right? And now they're going to be saying the same thing, I would think, to some degree.
Okay, again, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Like, I think probability suggests that Dylan Raiola is the quarterback in 2026, and TJ Lateef probability would tell
somewhere
you
else.
that is somewhere else. But okay, I think it's important to remember a little bit of history here in that, and maybe I'm dealing with my own skeletons here, but Bo Pelini picked a quarterback very early that I think raised the floor of the program, but wasn't able to crack the ceiling, right? Scott Frost picked a quarterback very early who probably raised the floor, but couldn't crack the ceiling. Like, it would not be a shock based on the recent history of Nebraska football to have a quarterback that started early, played a ton of football, but didn't show a ton of improvement, and therefore couldn't get Nebraska to where they ultimately wanted to go, and was part of the undoing of the head coach. So keep that history in your mind when you're analyzing this, because just because a guy starts 30, 40 games at quarterback doesn't mean that he's going to keep getting better and keep raising the ceiling of the program.
But let me just real quick, if that scenario would happen, what you say is the most likely one, which I don't really disagree with, but man, next year is going to be tense if that happens, right? Like,
yes.
You think it's bad? You think it's bad now in terms of every call-in show being simply about Raiola versus Lateef? Can you freaking imagine next year? Where the backup, by the way, is what? His brother? I don't even I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Jack, we go through this stinking cycle, and it's maddening to go through this over and over, but everybody else is going through it too. When your head coach reaches year 3 or year 4 or year 5, like the intensity and the pressure ramps up. Every decision that you make leading you to that moment is tension filled. So there's no avoiding whatever path they choose. There's no avoiding that the pressure next year is probably going to be greater than it was this year, which was greater than it was last year. Like, this is just the natural cycle of these things. Like, at a school that really cares about this stuff, it's like honeymoon, and then, year 2, a little bit of improvement, and then, it sort of gets real. There's a reason there's like 6 head coaching openings in the SEC, and they were all guys that were in like year 3 and year 4 of the program. So I would love to tell you that it's going to be kumbaya next year and everybody's going to be thrilled, but whatever choice they make at quarterback, there's going to be a lot of stress.
Dirk, along those lines, you said something earlier about Matt Rhule. You said you think he's done a good but not great job so far. And that got me thinking of when we are judging and grading coaches, how do we do it? Like, for example, Bo Pelini, he was often, because it was still so recent, he was compared to Tom Osborne and the success that Tom Osborne had. We haven't really done that around here in quite some time, right? And of course, then you have other coaches around the country. We brought up Curt Cignetti earlier. He is going to be a natural comparison point given the success he has had at a non-blue blood institution. Who are you comparing Matt Rhule's job to? Is it a former Husker coach? Is it the current state of the sport? Is it a amalgamation of the two? Like, what does that look like in your mind?
Oh, I think the landscape has changed enough where almost all former Nebraska coaches are irrelevant in judging the program. Like, I mean, I can't even think of one that is comparable. In part because each one is just so different, and most of them are failures. but also because, I just think college football has changed to where your comparison needs to be more, it needs to be more Wisconsin or Indiana, instead. And I use those deliberately as two different, corners of the spectrum. It needs to be more, I think, about what's happening around you versus what has happened here previously. So, Nebraska needs to be, I don't think this part has changed that much, guys. Nebraska needs to be a top 20 program. They need to be a team that, I haven't done the math on this or spelled it out, but Nebraska needs to be a team that every third year is in the college football playoff. Needs to be a top 25 team 2 out of 3 years. Like, it needs to be a program that people consider, a regular contender and not just kind of an also-ran in the Big Ten. So, not to Michigan or Ohio State's level, but probably at that next tier. And that's got to be the goal for Rhule. He's not there yet. I mean, that's why I said I think he's done a good job, but not a great job. And I don't think I think people need to, as much as you can, shake the skeletons of, Bo Pelini, Tom Osborne, Bill Callahan, et cetera, and start judging Nebraska more by what their peer institutions are doing versus what has happened here in the past.
Dirk, have you ever seen a player?
Am I wrong about that, Josh? How do you feel about it?
No, I think I love your response, because I was thinking, compared to Scott Frost, he has done a great job, right? But like that's never been the expectation. Like, compared to Mike Riley, I think he's been slightly better, I guess. Maybe the same.
Yeah, but,
I mean, but that's not who that's
mean, yeah.
Correct.
It doesn't mean anything. Like, that's we got to stop, and it's ironic me saying it based on how much of Nebraska football has defined my life since I was 7 years old. But like, we kind of have to stop doing this whole thing where, Rhule in year 3 versus Riley in year 3 versus Pelini in year 3. Like, at some point that just kind of becomes irrelevant. Like, go chase something that is meaningful. I'm still waiting for Nebraska to kind of have its scrapbook season that makes us stop thinking about 1997 and 1999. It's like, have the breakthrough. That needs to be the goal, not to exceed Scott Frost.
Right, and then on the other end of it, they're comparing to Cignetti, right? That's now the other end of a new coach and these expectations. That's blown the whole world up, right? For new coaches.
Yeah, and that's a relevant comparison. Like, I get irritated with people who are like, well, you can't judge him by Curt Cignetti. That's a special case. It's like, well,
I still don't get it. I still don't get it. I still don't believe it.
Nebraska's spending a lot of money to have a special case. Can we stumble into a special case at Nebraska every once in a while? Like, why is that off the table? So I'm not saying like it's got to be Rhule versus Cignetti, and this is your question for judging the program.
No,
but
it needs
to be a data point in the conversation.
Right, I know, but that always becomes the only other comparison as well. And I'm not saying you shouldn't use it, but it becomes the only one
you could be Luke Fickell. I mean,
that's true.
Say thanks that you're not in that situation.
Jeez,
right?
No kidding. I still expect they're gonna uncover that Cignetti is playing like genetically altered players or robots or so. There's something happening there that I still don't.
NFL players are suiting up in Indiana uniforms every week. Yeah. It's like Danny Almonte, but with a different twist.
Exactly. That's like Elijah Serrata is actually DK Metcalf, and it's like nobody noticed. There's something like that has to be happening. There's no way. I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't know what but I don't.
If you could rewind 2 years and just take that 30 seconds of the show and play it for yourself in 2023, Indiana football is going to be so good that they're going to be cheating like crazy. They're going to be using NFL players.
And it's funny because I was annoyed with people even when he started. They're like, I kind of like Indiana to have a good start this year. And I'm like, oh, God, here we go, right? And
now they might win a national championship.
Now they're probably going to win the freaking national championship. It's unbelievable. Have a Heisman winner and the national championship. Indiana. It still seems like a dream. It honestly seems like a dream to me. All right, now let me get to the question I was going to ask before Dirk interrupted me and asked Josh a question. have you ever seen a player go from, in such a quick time, slightly above replacement level to, I don't know, third team all conference to potential All-American, as Emmett Johnson has done in, I don't know, whatever period of time you want to define that in? I guess just this season, probably.
I thought you were talking about Alex Gordon there for a second. Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? And it's one of these weird deals. Jack is showing an Alex Gordon an autograph picture in his well manicured office.
I got stuff. At least I got stuff. Your counter's a little dirty. Your counter's a little dirty, FYI. There's some dishes.
Yeah, tell me about it.
You might want to put that away next time.
It's shocking, and the fact that he gets better like seemingly every week is kind of crazy too. In some ways, it's please accept my context when I say this, but it's a little bit Sue-like in how long it took. Like Sue was a kind of a disappointment the first 1, 2, 3 years on campus. He was good his 4th year on campus, and then 5th year it was like 4 games into the season, like they go down to Missouri and play in the monsoon, and all of a sudden Ndamukong Suh is like Reggie White, and it's like the rest of the season he was Reggie White, right? And it's like
that's true, man. That's true.
There's a little bit of a Sue thing going on here. Ironically, the program is kind of in a similar place too. Like they're good but not great. They're spinning their wheels a little bit, but the nice part is Emmett can come back. Sue was done, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. I think he's probably an NFL player next year.
Yeah.
But it is cool, and I think a genuinely likable guy too.
100%.
I mean, not my favorite players at Nebraska, just in terms of like watching them play. Levante David, Amir Abdullah. I think Emmett Johnson is in that class. Like he's in recent memory. Sue was fun, but it was a little bit like watching, a kid beat up on kindergartners on the playground.
Yeah.
This feels like a guy who, I don't want to say he's ordinary in terms of talent, but it feels like he's getting the most out of it. And again, a really likable person included. So it's the story of the season for sure. And just to take us back to our original conversation, it's one more reason that Nebraska's offense should be one of the absolute best in the Big Ten right now.
So if he has a Sue moment, is that like 300 yards rushing versus Iowa? And then and to go back to the beginning of the conversation, they lose on the 13-10 field goal. We're like, wow, what a performance. No. And in the end, it didn't matter.
No, he runs over Cody Hawkins.
I was thinking of the Texas. I was thinking of the Texas game.
Okay.
Yeah. 1 second. Kirk Ferentz is like, no, you got to put a second on the clock for the 70-yard field goal.
That's gonna happen.
Do you guys ever go back and like just randomly look at that Roy Halou game when he had 300 yards? Like how odd that was.
It's been on Big Ten Network 8,700 times.
Big Ten classic.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like one of the most random, amazing games. Anyway, Nebraska was really fun to watch in those couple years.
Yeah. Dirk, before we let you go, this is the I-80 football show, but I have to imagine you and Jack want to do like a couple of minutes on hoops, given that they just had another clunker of a performance, but they got a dub on Tuesday night.
Is Nebraska?
Hey, Jack.
Well, yeah. What?
Well, I was going to say, did you stay up late and watch Gonzaga's like 30-3 run in the second half?
I'll tell you a true story. First of all, it was on ESPN, so I couldn't watch it. Thank you, YouTube TV. But so I thought about listening to the radio. Like sometimes I put an earbud in, I'll listen to the end of Monday Night Football or something when I go to bed. But the only broadcast I know how to find quickly was the Creighton broadcast. And I don't know if you guys know the play-by-play announcer, but I don't think that would help me get to sleep, even if he was saying things that made me happy.
I don't know, man. He probably was pretty dejected during that 21-0 run.
Maybe it would have been a nice kind of ASMR type thing. Like, I don't know. But so I did look up this morning. Listen to this. Nebraska is the Ken Palm favorite in every non-conference game they play this year, unless Mississippi State they get in Kansas City, which is really close between the two of them. So potentially just rolling through the non-con unbeaten as usual.
I think there's enough to watch here that it's interesting. I think offensively they could be a lot of fun. There's just not much margin for error. They don't have quite as many options for how to win games. And so I think that's a bit of a concern. I'm going to need to see Braden Frager against more than, NAIA schools or whatever this has been to believe there. I think Rink Mast is the best hope. If Rink Mast is a first-team All-Big Ten guy and he stays healthy all year, I think Nebraska is in the NCAA tournament conversation. But the margin for error is not as big as you would want it to be.
Dirk, all those high school basketball players that you work with, and I guess Omaha's had a different history with it, but man, in Lincoln, it has been the guys that nobody was talking about in 9th grade, right? 8th grade, 9th grade, the guys who were in 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and everybody was talking about, they're at some kind of a prep school JUCO right now. The guys who are playing Division I basketball were the guys who got incredibly better 11th, 12th freshman year of college.
Okay, so
I mean that's who those are the stars.
Yeah, and it's really interesting.
And they grew, and they usually grew too. That's the other thing.
Yeah. No, I mean the frame on guys like Griesel and Frager is crazy. I mean, and I think Frager is going to be a good player. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's going to be the key to this season. But I think one of the lessons in watching, high school basketball in this era and even into college is how many of these guys they really needed until they were 21, 22 years old to kind of take off, right? Shireman was good, but I think you could argue that he surged a little late. All the way back to Mike Dahm, and then you've got John Tanjay, and Chucky was an early mature, but I think he's kind of the exception there. The rule I think around here is that it takes guys until they're 20, 21 years old to really become the player they're going to be. And so be patient with this stuff. Don't shove guys to the sideline right away. This will not shock you, but I'd love to see, Nebraska and Creighton to a lesser degree invest in these kids a little bit more with the idea that, hey, it might be year 3 before they really make a difference.
Well, yeah, and Frager, and I don't know if I agree with you. I have been unbelievably. I was skeptical of Frager. I've seen him in person 3 times now. It was, I never would have guessed from what I had seen in the past, and so that was really impressive. But I forget what my overall point was going to be with that. But nonetheless, I remember what is he reclassified. That's the other thing. He didn't have a senior year of high school.
Yeah,
which is crazy. And then he comes in,
Jawan
Gary and Rank Mast and all those guys there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, a really good decision there. And I think, usually kids are reclassing the other way, right? They're reclassing to stick around for an extra year of high school, not to get out of high school a year early. This was, Cooper Flagg did it that way, but not many others do it that way. So, a really good find, and I think likely to stick around and be a long-term guy. I mean, this is the nice part about having a kid like that is he's not gonna be gone after a year or two. Which unfortunately we've seen that a lot with Nebraska basketball is they find something and then it's gone, right?
Or they have a freshman that comes in that never develops. I mean, listen, Sam Hoiberg's the only one who stayed there during the Hoiberg era from the beginning to the end, right? a Lincoln walk-on who's his son. That's it. No, that's been one of the reasons they haven't taken the next step.
Yeah, but again, to your point, stability, continuity, I still think that matters. And I'm excited about a guy who might be part of multiple good teams,
right?
As opposed to a guy who's here as, one stop en route to somewhere else. Bryce McGowan's maybe being the example of that, but and that's nothing against Bryce, but it's just I think it matters to have some continuity even in today's college basketball.
Right. I think Rank Mast has shown that, him being in there, he hasn't from the beginning. Last question I have for you on that is, do you think this is what this offense is, what they're doing now? Because it looks markedly different than what he did when he's come in here earlier. In fact, there's been different versions, but they've all been different than this. Was this what he always envisioned? Is this the Fred Hoiberg offense? And if so, why did it take so long to get to it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think we got to wait and see a little bit. But I think Mast is just so it's a little bit of like the mobile quarterback theory, like he just makes it easier on everybody else. And I think Fred is smart enough to recognize, when he's got something that nobody else has. And, again, I think we got to wait and judge them against real teams. They haven't played real teams yet, except for BYU. But I think, it's potentially fun to watch. I mean, they've got a lot more skill than they did early on in the Hoiberg era. If they can find a little juice athletically, I think that matters. And then they've got to stay healthy because, like I said, there's not a lot of margin for error here.
Rank needs to stay healthy in particular. Yep. But yes. I'll be in Sioux Falls on Saturday. I'll let you know how they do against the Big 12 team.
Boots on the ground.
We'll see.
Hey, this is what separates the I-80 football show from other places out there. Is just you'll send your correspondents around the country. It really matters to me that Jack is going to be there, and the bird's eye view, not just sitting behind a TV on his couch like I will be doing.
Right. It's nice.
For classic media. He won't be asking any tough questions after the game. Am I right, Jack? No tough questions.
I will, just not to anyone who matters.
Okay. Dirk Chatelain.
Just rhetorical questions mainly to the
nice. Dirk, this was great, man. Thanks as always for joining us. I promise the next time that we reach out to you to be a guest, we will do so after happy news, good news for Nebraska athletics. So it's on them in all reality to give us good news for us to ask you back on. But thanks again.
Well, this definitely blew up in your face. You guys had easy ratings in your dreams. You're like, oh, Dirk's going to carry us through a show. We won't even have to talk. And then, TJ Lateef shows up and throws a wrench in your plans.
There it is. All right. That's it, Josh. That's it for the football show. We're going to be back Saturday morning. Yes. Mm-hmm. Saturday morning for a little coffee show.
Yep. Get you ready for no football coming up on the Saturday morning coffee show.
A lot of basketball talk, Josh. Are you ready? Yeah. It's that time of year.
Thank you, Dirk.
Go, baby.
Thank you for not asking about Jaden Daniels.
Wow, Jack, a little hoops at the end of the I-80 football show. I just sat there and listened because I have zero takes. I haven't seen them. They're on BTN Plus right now. I have no access to them.
Sad. You're missing arguably the greatest show in basketball right now.
People say.
Although the last game wasn't too great. And as Josh said at the beginning, I will be down at the Sanford Pentagon on Saturday in Sioux Falls, watching them in person. I will be reporting back next week, not only on Wednesday night with Josh, but we will be announcing when we're going to be putting together our basketball shows. We might have to bounce around with some times with those, but we'll get going with some basketball shows next week as well, or a basketball show to recap what we saw in Sioux Falls against Oklahoma, the home, Josh, of my second day with my wife at the Empire Mall, TGI Fridays. I don't know if it's still there. We'll find out.
Is this the Simon Birch date, or was that the first date?
This was the Simon Birch date. The second date. Drove an hour and a half from Orange City, Iowa to go to TGI Fridays and watch Simon Birch.
Incredible.
And now we've got 2 kids. Right.
Congratulations to you. Old heads will know why the Simon Birch choice was quite the choice. To see, if you've never seen Simon Birch, no spoilers, but yikes. All right, so that's what we have coming up next week. Also, after Nebrasketball will return, we're just basically trying to get into the good games of the season, the games that people can watch on television.
And I'm at Oklahoma. There's a good chance we'll do one Thursday night against Kansas City, but I'm finalizing when they play in Kansas City. Mm-hmm. But I'll finalize that. So.
Yes, and there will be something for the Creighton game as well in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. All the announcements to come, and again, patreon.com/I-80 Club. We would love to have you subscribe and get access to all of our stuff advertisement free. Big Ten Breakdown tomorrow, Saturday morning coffee show this weekend, yada, yada, yada. Jack, Thank you.
Yeah.
What a fun conversation with Dirk. Thanks again to Dirk Chatelain for joining us on the podcast today. For Jack, I am Josh. Thanks for watching or listening to the I-80 Football Show. We will talk to you soon.